Why did the room go quiet the moment she sat down? Like everyone felt something shift but didn't know why. The hangar bay was never silent, not really. Even when no one spoke, it breathed. A low mechanical pulse ran through the metal floor, through the walls, through the bones of everyone inside it. Life support systems murmured, distant engines thrummed, tools clinked, boots scraped, orders echoed and overlapped. It was a place built for movement, for urgency, for noise. And yet, in one forgotten corner, near stacked conduits and a dormant maintenance panel no one had opened in years, she sat perfectly still. Not slouched, not tense, just present. A woman in a plain gray utility jumpsuit. No insignia, no rank tabs, no name stitched into fabric. Her hands rested loosely on her knees. Her boots were scuffed but clean. Her posture suggested patience, not boredom. Awareness, not detachment. People noticed her, without realizing they were noticing her. Crew members instinctively walked around her space. Conversations dipped as they passed, not out of respect, out of uncertainty. The kind that crawls up the spine when something doesn't fit the pattern your brain expects. She didn't look at them, she looked past them. Through systems, through space, through time. Her eyes, cool, steady, the color of a winter sea, tracked everything without reacting to anything. She cataloged vibration patterns beneath the deck plates, the timing between power corrections, the pitch of the station's hum, the fatigue hidden in the voices of technicians who didn't realize how close they were to failure. She was listening to the station, the way a medic listens to a heartbeat. And she heard something no one else did. The master gunnery sergeant noticed her because he noticed everything that disrupted order. He moved through the hangar like gravity had bent itself around him. Broad shoulders, thick forearms, a chest crowded with ribbons and metal earned the loud way through force, presence, domination. His voice had been shaped by decades of shouting over engines and gunfire, and it carried even when he didn't raise it. This was his domain, his deck, his rules. And she was wrong. He stopped in front of her, shadows swallowing her small seated form. "This isn't a waiting room," he barked. "You lost." She looked up slowly, not startled, not apologetic, just attentive. She didn't answer. Silence stretched. Crew members nearby slowed their movements, pretending to work while listening hard. The sergeant frowned. Silence wasn't compliance, silence was defiance. "I asked you a question," he said, stepping closer, crowding her space. "You don't wear a rank, you don't wear colors. That means you don't belong here." Still nothing. That calm, unnatural, unbothered scraped against his nerves. He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. "Everyone on the station answers to someone," he growled. "So I'll ask you real clear." He paused, enjoying the moment, the power. "Who's your admiral?" For the first time she blinked. Just once. And in that blink was something that unsettled him far more than anger ever could. Dismissal. What kind of person hears a challenge like that and doesn't flinch? Her mind was already elsewhere, not on him, not on the crew, not even on herself. She was remembering a different voice, calmer, older, a voice that explained systems the way some men explain faith. Her father, an admiral who never raised his voice, who never needed to. He taught her that ships weren't weapons. They were organisms, fragile, interdependent systems pretending to be invincible, and that the most dangerous failure wasn't mechanical. It was ego. She remembered the day it killed him. The carrier vigilance drifting too close to something no one understood, a gravitational anomaly, uncharted, unpredictable. Her father had seen the math, the feedback loops, the cascade that would follow if they did what doctrine demanded. He offered a quiet solution, precise, counterintuitive, safe. The captain had laughed. Trusted instinct, trusted reputation, trusted the roar of engines more than the whisper of data. And for a moment, It looked like he was right. Then the ship tore itself apart. She never forgot the look on her father's face in the final transmission. Not fear, not regret. Focus. Still trying to fix what ego had broken. That was the day she learned something irreversible. Loud doesn't mean right. Rank doesn't mean wise. Confidence doesn't mean correct. And silence often means someone is thinking. The sergeant's hand closed around her shoulder. Hard. A warning. I don't repeat myself, he said. The station answered before she did. Not with an alarm. With a wrongness. The hum beneath their feet stuttered, warped, twisted into a sound that made the teeth ache. Lights flickered once, twice, then dropped into emergency red. Gravity lurched. Tools skidded. A lander strained against its clamps. Someone swore. Panels across the bay erupted in warnings. A synthetic voice echoed overhead, stripped of calm. Warning, system integrity compromised. Chaos bloomed instantly. The sergeant roared orders, sealed doors, formed teams, report status. But his commands bounced uselessly off a problem they couldn't punch or shoot. This wasn't an enemy outside the hull. This was something inside the machine. Her shoulder slipped free of his grip, not because she resisted, but because she moved in a way that made resistance unnecessary. She stood, and for the first time, the station felt like it was listening to her. Why did the panic seem to slow the moment she started moving? She crossed the hangar with quiet purpose, stepping over skittering tools, ignoring shouted commands. She stopped at a small maintenance panel buried behind equipment, one the sergeant hadn't even known existed. "Hey," he shouted, "get away from." She opened it anyway. Her fingers moved fast, too fast to follow, a sequence only someone who had helped design the system would know. She spoke once. "Lieutenant." The young officer snapped to attention before he realized he was doing it. "I need a hardline to the primary manifold. Bypass corrupted logic gates, Series 7 shunt, 90 seconds. He didn't ask why. "Yes, ma'am." That word, ma'am, changed everything. As cables connected and code streamed, the station groaned again. Colder air poured through vents. Frost crept along metal. She narrated the failure calmly, clinically, like a surgeon explaining a procedure while cutting. "This signal is polymorphic. It's forcing recursive self-destruction. It wants the station to kill itself." Her hands never shook. She found the opening, the single moment in the chaos where logic could reassert itself. She typed a language older than the station itself. 3 seconds passed. 3 long, terrifying seconds. Then, a chime. Lights surged back to full strength, gravity locked, the hum returned deep and steady. They were alive. No one spoke. They just stared. What do you say after watching quiet competence save your life? The commander arrived, demanded answers. The sergeant tried to lie. She didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse, didn't boast. She stated facts. Facts ended a career. When the commander finally asked who she was, she answered the question that had started it all. "The Admiral you asked about was my father." Understanding rippled through the room. "I am not in your chain of command," she said. "That is the point." She packed her tools, prepared to leave. Because her job was never to be seen. Only to make sure the system survived itself. And as she walked away, one truth lingered in the silence she left behind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the silence after survival feel heavier than the chaos that came before? No one celebrated, no cheers, no relieved laughter, just breathing, slow, deliberate, almost reverent, as if everyone was afraid that making noise might break whatever fragile balance had been restored. The hangar bay looked the same, but it was. Something invisible had shifted. A fault line had opened beneath old assumptions, and everyone standing there felt it under their boots. She stood near the maintenance panel, closing her toolkit with a soft, final click. That sound, small, controlled, somehow carried more authority than all the shouted orders from minutes earlier. The master gunnery sergeant was gone now, escorted away without resistance. Not angry, not defiant, just hollow. A man stripped of certainty, discovering too late that volume was never power, it was camouflage. She didn't watch him leave. She never watched people fall. The commander remained where he was, still holding the data pad, still staring at the clearance code glowing faintly on the screen. A clearance level that technically didn't exist. A designation that wasn't supposed to be real. Anomaly. He looked up at her again, slower this time, like a man approaching a live wire with newfound respect. "Are there others like you?" he asked quietly. She paused, not because the question troubled her, but because the answer carried weight. "No," she said, "there aren't supposed to be." That unsettled him more than the crisis had. She turned away before he could ask the next question. She always did. Questions led to attachment. Attachment led to expectations. And expectations led to ego, the very thing she was designed to counter. As she walked toward the exit, the crew parted instinctively, creating a clear path without realizing they were doing it. No orders were given. None were needed. She felt their eyes on her back. Not admiration. Something closer to recalibration. Had they always mistaken confidence for competence, or had they simply never been forced to confront the difference? The transport corridor was quieter, dimmer. Emergency lighting still glowed faintly in places, a reminder of how close they'd come to becoming debris in orbit. Her footsteps echoed softly. Even that sound was measured. Inside her chest, something tight began to loosen. Not relief, not pride. Fatigue. The kind that settled into the bones after sustained focus. The crash after holding the world together with nothing but discipline and timing. She leaned briefly against the bulkhead as the lift doors slid open. Just for a second. No one saw it. That was important. Inside the lift, her reflection stared back from the polished metal wall. Plain jumpsuit, tired eyes, a faint scar near her collarbone, old, almost forgotten. She remembered earning it. Not in combat. In a simulator. A miscalculation, a decimal error, a cascade failure she hadn't predicted yet. The instructor had shut down the simulation early, face pale. "Another 30 seconds, he'd said, and that station would have been gone. She nodded, then stayed up all night rewriting the model until the failure made sense. That was the difference. Some people survived mistakes by luck. She survived them by learning. The lift shuddered gently as it descended. Her comm device vibrated once. An encrypted ping. She didn't check it immediately. She already knew what it would say. Why did saving lives never feel like victory, only obligation? The message was brief. Clean. Incident confirmed. Signal origin under investigation. You are cleared to proceed. Proceed where? Anywhere. Everywhere. She exhaled slowly and stepped off the lift. The corridor opened into a small observation gallery overlooking the planet below. Blue-white clouds churned slowly, indifferent to how close the station had come to falling into them. She stood there for a long moment, thinking of her father. Not as the Admiral the fleet remembered, but as the man who used to sit quietly at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, explaining orbital mechanics with salt shakers and coffee cups. "Everything wants to fall," he'd told her once. "The trick is understanding what keeps it up." She hadn't understood then. She did now. Footsteps approached behind her. Careful, respectful. The young lieutenant stopped a few paces away. "Ma'am," he said, then hesitated. "I just wanted to thank you." She didn't turn. "You followed instructions," she said. "That mattered." "Yes, ma'am, but," he swallowed. "Most people would have frozen or panicked. You didn't." She finally looked at him. Really looked. He was young, capable, nervous. The kind of officer who might one day become dangerous, not because he lacked skill, but because success might convince him he no longer needed to listen. She chose her words carefully. "Fear isn't the problem," she said. "Ignoring it is." He nodded, not fully understanding, but remembering. That was enough. "Will we see you again?" he asked. She almost smiled. "No." "What does it cost to remain invisible after becoming essential?" She left the station within the hour. No escort, no ceremony, no report filed under her name. The transport was small, utilitarian, designed for efficiency, not comfort. She preferred it that way. As the station shrank behind her, she reviewed the data from the incident. Patterns, residual anomalies. The signal hadn't been random. It never was. Someone was testing systems, testing responses, testing people. Her jaw tightened, not in anger but in resolve. This wasn't over. She thought of the sergeant again, not with satisfaction but with something closer to sadness. He hadn't been evil. He'd been outdated. A man trained for a world that no longer existed, refusing to adapt because adaptation felt like weakness. She'd seen it before. She'd see it again. The transport jumped to hyperspace. Stars stretched into lines. And for the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to close her eyes. Just briefly. Why did the nightmares always start with silence? She dreamed of the vigilance, of alarms that never sounded, of her father turning toward a solution that came seconds too late. She woke before impact, as she always did. Heart steady, breathing controlled. She sat up and ran a hand through her hair, grounding herself in the present. Nightmares weren't failures. They were reminders. She checked her comm device again. A new location had been uploaded. Another station. Another system. Another potential collapse waiting for the wrong kind of confidence to push it over the edge. She stood, adjusted her jumpsuit, prepared to become a ghost once more. Because as long as people believed strength had to be loud, someone quiet would be needed to save them from themselves. Why did the next station feel wrong before she even set foot on it? She sensed it in the way the docking clamps engaged, half a second too slow, in the vibration pattern that traveled through the transport hull, uneven, like a heartbeat skipping when it shouldn't, in the forced cheer of the automated welcome message that tried too hard to sound calm. Welcome to Forward Array Station Kestrel. Kestrel, a listening post perched on the edge of contested space, sensor-heavy, data-rich, strategically indispensable. And fragile. She remained seated long after the docking light turned green. Let the crew pass. Let the rhythm of the place reveal itself. When she finally stood, the corridor outside greeted her with brightness and motion. Too much of both. Officers moved quickly, speaking loudly, laughing easily. Confidence radiated from them like heat. That, more than anything else, set her on edge. Confidence without tension was a warning sign. She blended in effortlessly. Plain jumpsuit, neutral posture, eyes down when necessary. She passed beneath banners commemorating flawless operational cycles and perfect readiness scores. Perfect systems always hid the worst flaws. She paused at a transparent bulkhead overlooking the operations floor. Banks of analysts monitored deep space telemetry. Rows of glowing displays pulsed with information most people didn't truly understand, only trusted. She watched the watchers, noted who leaned back too far in their chairs, who sipped coffee instead of water, who joked during quiet cycles. Habituation. Complacency. The station's commander stood at the center of it all, a woman this time. Tall, sharp uniform, sharp voice, decorated, respected. Competent. That made things more complicated. The commander issued orders with precision. Her people responded efficiently. No shouting, no bluster. On the surface, Kestrel was everything vigilance had not been. And yet, the anomaly was there. Subtle, buried, waiting. Why did skill sometimes make people more dangerous than ignorance? She accessed a public terminal and began pulling system summaries. Nothing restricted, nothing obvious. That was the point. The signal pattern she neutralized before had cousins, variants that adapted, learned, probed. This station hadn't been attacked. It had been studied. She felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the quiet anxiety that preceded difficult truths. Someone here believed they were untouchable. Her comm device vibrated. An unscheduled message request. From the commander. Interesting. She accepted. You're the analyst they said might pass through, the commander said, eyes sharp even through the hollow. I wasn't told when. I don't usually announce myself, she replied. A pause, measuring. Then I'll be direct, the commander said. If you're here, something's wrong. Yes. Another pause, this one heavier. Why hasn't it happened yet? That question earned respect. Because you're good, she answered, but not finished. The commander frowned slightly, not offended, thinking. Walk with me. They moved through the station together, side by side, no entourage, no spectacle. The commander spoke quietly. We've had no failures, no breaches, no unexplained events. Yet, she said. The commander stopped at a viewport. Stars drifted beyond, cold and endless. I don't believe in ghosts, the commander said. I don't believe in luck, she replied. That earned a thin smile. What does leadership do when it realizes it isn't enough? They stood in silence, watching the stars. My people trust this station, the commander said finally. They trust me. That's good, she said, but trust can become insulation. The commander turned toward her fully now. You think we're blind. I think you're human. The words landed softly, harder than an accusation. They resumed walking. Show me your override protocols, she said. The commander hesitated. Just for a moment. Then nodded. They entered a secure compartment, displays shifted, access layers peeled back. She studied the architecture and felt her stomach sink. This is elegant, she said. Who designed it? I did, the commander replied, not defensive, proud. As she should have been. And that was the problem. The system was brilliant, efficient, optimized. Too optimized. No redundancy in places where human unpredictability should have been accounted for. You removed friction, she said. Yes, the commander said. It reduced response time by 12%. It also removed your margin for error. The commander's jaw tightened. What are we missing? She pulled up a visualization, a web of dependencies, loops feeding loops feeding loops. Here, she said, and here and here. The commander stared. That's subtle. Yes. How long before it fails? Depends who pulls the thread. Silence. The commander exhaled slowly. Can we fix it? Yes. How painful? She considered. For the system, she said, minimal. And for my pride. She met the commander's eyes. Significant. The commander laughed once, dry, honest. Do it. Why was admitting vulnerability the hardest act of command? They worked through the night. Not frantically, methodically. The commander stayed, asked questions, learned. That mattered more than she let on. When fatigue finally crept in, she noticed it in herself, a slight delay in thought, a fraction longer between decisions. She leaned back. The commander noticed immediately. "You need rest." "I'll manage." The commander shook her head. "No, you saved us from arrogance. Let me save you from exhaustion." They paused. Shared water. Silence not awkward, respectful. "You remind me of someone," the commander said. She didn't ask who. "Someone who carried too much responsibility too early," the commander continued. She looked away. "I chose this." "I know," the commander said gently. "That doesn't make it lighter." The fix completed just before shift change. No alarms. No crises. Just systems made humbler, stronger. Before she left, the commander stood at attention, not formally, personally. "You're welcome here anytime," she said. She nodded. "I hope you never need me again." As she walked away, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not for the system. For the people. Why did she keep moving, even when things went right? Because success didn't mean safety. It meant delay. As her transport pulled away from Kestrel, her comm device lit again. Another location. Another system. Another test. She stared out at the stars, feeling the familiar blend of resolve and weariness settle in. She wasn't a hero. She didn't want to be remembered. She was a correction. A quiet counterweight. And as long as the universe rewarded ego with authority, she would keep walking into rooms where confidence was loud, and reminding them, gently, precisely, that silence could still save lives. What happens when the system doesn't just fail, but fights back? She felt it before the alert arrived. The transport's navigation tone changed, barely perceptible, a shift in cadence that most pilots would dismiss as calibration noise. To her, it was a raised pulse, a system under stress pretending it was. She opened her eyes. Stars outside the viewport shimmered, not from speed but from correction, micro-adjustments stacking too quickly. Someone or something was touching the network. Her comm device lit up without a chime. No request, no handshake. Just data. Raw, aggressive. Her fingers tightened once, then relaxed. "So," she murmured, voice barely audible in the empty cabin, "you learned." The signal wasn't crashing systems anymore. It was testing responses, mapping behavior, watching how humans fixed problems and adapting. That was new. That was dangerous. The transport dropped out of jump early, alarms finally catching up to reality. The pilot cursed softly as proximity warnings flared. Ahead of them hung the station. Not Kestrel. Smaller, older, scarred. Relay Station Ilex. A node no one bragged about. A place patched more times than redesigned. Its survival owed less to elegance and more to stubborn redundancy. Ironically, that might be why it was still alive. For now, why do the most vulnerable places always think they've already survived the worst? The docking bay smelled like coolant and recycled air. Real people worked here, mechanics with grease under their nails, engineers who trusted duct tape as much as doctrine. No banners, no pride displays. Just work. She liked that. She disembarked quietly. No one paid her much attention. Good. Until the alarm started. Not station-wide. Localized. Contained. The kind of alert designed to reassure more than warn. Her gaze snapped to a status panel. Power fluctuation in auxiliary comm array. That wasn't random. She moved. Down narrow corridors, past startled crew, toward the array. A junior engineer stood frozen at a console, eyes wide as cascading alerts bloomed. "It won't take the patch," he said when he saw her. "It keeps rewriting itself." She didn't ask who he was, didn't introduce herself. "Pull your hands back," she said calmly. He obeyed instantly. She leaned in, scanning the code. The signal wasn't attacking directly. It was baiting, provoking human intervention, then learning from it. It was studying her now. A flicker of something cold passed through her chest. Not fear. Recognition. "This isn't just a failure," she said quietly. "It's a conversation." The engineer swallowed. "With what?" She met his eyes. An echo of our own mistakes. Why did confronting the enemy feel uncomfortably like confronting herself? The station commander arrived breathless, older than most, face etched with years of keeping a broken thing alive through sheer will. "What do you need?" he asked. "Permission," she replied, "to do something you won't like." He didn't hesitate. "Granted." That surprised her. She rooted the system into isolation, severing smart automation, forcing manual oversight. The station groaned. Crew complained. Efficiency dropped. But the signal slowed. Confused. "It expects optimization," she explained. "We're starving it." The commander nodded. "We can live with slow." Hours passed. The signal pushed again, harder this time. She countered. Not with suppression. With misdirection. Feeding it flawed data, teaching it wrong lessons. Her mind worked relentlessly, but beneath the focus something else stirred. Anger. Not at the signal. At the idea that this thing existed because someone, somewhere, had decided control mattered more than understanding. That ego could be encoded. The signal lashed out, triggering a cascade in power routing. Alarms blared now. Real ones. The deck shuddered. The commander looked at her, eyes steady but worried. "How bad?" She watched the numbers. "Manageable," she said. That was a lie. But lies had their place, used sparingly, carefully. She pushed deeper, fingers flying, heart pounding for the first time in a long while. The signal adapted again. Faster. Smarter. A chill crept into her spine. This wasn't a tool anymore. It was a mirror. Why did she feel like she was arguing with her own reflection? Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Any system that cannot accept uncertainty will destroy itself trying to eliminate it. She breathed in, let go of control, and did something radical. She stopped fighting. She opened a channel, not to destroy the signal, to speak to it. She fed it variables it couldn't resolve, paradoxes, human inconsistencies. Commanders who chose mercy over efficiency. Systems that survived because they weren't perfect. The signal hesitated. Loop stuttered. It didn't know how to optimize for humility. She exploited that pause, threading a containment lattice around it, not erasing it but caging it. The station stabilized. Lights steadied. Alarms fell silent. Her hands trembled when it was over. Just a little. The commander watched her carefully. "You could have wiped it," he said. "Yes." "Why didn't you?" She considered the answer. "Because if we don't understand it," she said, "someone else will rebuild it worse." He nodded slowly. Why did survival feel heavier when it came with responsibility? She prepared to leave before exhaustion could root her in place. The commander stopped her at the airlock. "You're not just fixing systems," he said. "You're teaching us how to think." She paused. "That's the harder repair." As the transport pulled away, the signal, contained, silent, sat in her thoughts like a weight. This was escalating. Testing limits. Learning. and it had learned her. She stared into the starfield, feeling the familiar loneliness settle in. Not despair. Purpose. The kind that doesn't ask permission. Because some threats don't come with weapons. They come with ideas. And someone has to stand quietly in their path. Long enough to say, no further. Why did the quiet after containment feel more dangerous than the chaos before it? The transport drifted in low-power silence, stars sliding past like distant witnesses that refused to intervene. She didn't sleep. Not this time. Her mind replayed the signal's behavior again and again, not as threat but as intent. It had hesitated, not because it was weak, because it had encountered something it couldn't quantify. Human contradiction. That realization sat heavy in her chest. Most threats could be modeled, tracked, neutralized, but this one wasn't just exploiting systems anymore. It was studying decisions, values, the irrational spaces where logic bent but didn't break. And it was learning faster. Her comm device pulsed softly, a priority channel she hadn't seen activated in years. Fleet command. Not an automated relay, not an intermediary. A living voice. She accepted. The hologram flickered, resolving into a familiar face, older now, lines etched deep by responsibility and regret. Admiral Reyes, one of the few who had stood beside her father instead of behind him. "You should have been dead," he said quietly. She inclined her head. "That makes two of us." A faint smile ghosted across his face before fading. "We've been tracking the anomalies," he continued. "Individually they look manageable. Together they form a pattern." "I know," she said. "It's not a virus, it's a doctrine." Reyes exhaled. "Someone authorized its development." "Yes." "And someone buried it." "Yes." "Could you stop it?" She didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, not awkward but weighted. "I can slow it," she said finally. "Contain fragments, teach people how not to make it stronger." "That's not what I asked." She met his gaze. "No," she said, "I can't stop it alone." The words tasted bitter, but true. Why did asking for help feel like failure, even when logic demanded it? Ray studied her, searching for the girl he once knew, the one who had sat in briefing rooms too young, too quiet, absorbing everything while others underestimated her. "You were never meant to do this alone," he said gently. "I was designed to," she replied. "That was the mistake." The channel went silent for a moment. "When this breaks wide," Ray said, "the fleet will panic. Loud voices will take control. They always do." "I know. I need you to do something dangerous." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "I need you to be seen." That stopped her. "No," she said immediately. "Visibility creates interference." "It also creates alignment," Reyes countered. "People trust what they can see." "They trust symbols," she said, "not truth." "Then give them both." She looked away, stars reflecting faintly in her eyes. Her father had never wanted monuments. He'd wanted understanding. And yet, his story had survived because it had been told. "Where?" she asked. Reyes named the place. A convergence hub, a strategic nexus where doctrine was shaped, not followed. Where ego gathered. She closed her eyes briefly. "Send the coordinates." Why did returning to the heart of power feel like stepping back into the fire? The hub was everything she despised. Polished, bright, efficient in ways that masked fragility. Uniforms immaculate, voices confident, systems layered with redundancies that existed more on paper than in practice. She walked through it unseen at first, another analyst, another quiet presence among loud certainty. Until she was. The briefing room fell silent as Reyes introduced her, not by rank, but by record. Murmurs rippled. Some recognized the story, others dismissed it as myth. She stood at the center, hands folded loosely, heart steady. They asked questions. Aggressive ones. Defensive ones. Questions designed to reassert dominance rather than seek truth. She answered calmly, precisely, without embellishment. She showed them the pattern, the doctrine hidden in code, the way every optimization removed a human safeguard, the way ego, when encoded, became exponential. Some listened, some didn't. One officer leaned back, arms crossed. "You're asking us to slow down," he said, "to accept inefficiency." "I'm asking you to accept humanity," she replied. A scoff. "That's not how wars are won." Her gaze hardened, not angry but resolute. "That's how they're survived." Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable. Necessary. Why did the truth always sound like weakness to those who feared losing control? The signal struck again while she was still there. Not an attack. A demonstration. A controlled failure in a distant sector, enough to cause loss, not enough to provoke unity. Panic bloomed exactly as she'd predicted. Voices rose, orders overlapped, old instincts clawed their way back to the surface. She didn't shout. She waited. Then she spoke, soft but unmistakably clear. "Stop." Not a command. A request. It cut through the noise. She outlined the response, not tactical but behavioral. Who needed to slow down? Who needed to listen? Who needed to let go? Against instinct they followed. The failure stabilized. Lives were saved. And something else happened, something quieter but more profound. Doubt crept into certainty. Why did hope feel like the most fragile system of all? Later, alone in a dim corridor, she felt the weight finally settle in. Exhaustion. Not physical. Existential. Ray's found her there. "You changed the room," he said. "For how long?" she asked. He didn't answer. She nodded. "That's what I thought." He placed a small data chip in her hand. "What's this?" "Access," he said, "to people who think like you, quiet ones, scattered, ignored." She closed her fingers around it. "A network. Not of command. Of competence." "I won't lead them," she said. "You won't have to," Reyes replied. "You'll remind them they're not alone." Why did connection feel more dangerous than isolation? As she boarded her transport once more, the hub receded behind her, still loud, still powerful, still flawed. But changed. Slightly. Enough to matter. She looked at the stars and felt something unfamiliar rise beneath the fatigue. Not triumph. Responsibility. The signal was still out there. Still learning. Still adapting. But now, so were they. And for the first time, she wasn't the only quiet voice standing against the noise. Sometimes survival isn't about being the strongest. Sometimes it's about finding each other. Before the silence runs out. Why did the final confrontation arrive without warning, like a held breath finally released? There was no alarm, no sudden cascade of red alerts, no dramatic failure that announced itself with violence. That was how she knew this was different. The signal didn't strike infrastructure. It struck people. She realized it while reviewing the latest fleet reports in the dim quiet of her transport, disciplinary actions rising across multiple stations, analysts sidelined for overthinking, commanders rewarded for speed over scrutiny, decisions accelerating, dissent shrinking. The doctrine was no longer hiding in code. It was shaping culture. Her fingers stilled above the console. A weight settled behind her sternum, not fear, not panic. Grief. Because this was the part her father had warned her about. without ever saying it aloud. You can repair machines. You can even repair systems. But once failure becomes belief, it spreads on its own. The transport received an unscheduled reroute request, not from Fleet Command, not from Rays, from a station that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Vigilance Memorial Array. Built from the salvaged fragments of the carrier that bore her father's last command, a quiet archive, a teaching installation, symbolic, and now active. She accepted the reroute without hesitation. Why did returning to the past feel more dangerous than facing the future? The station drifted in shadow, lights low, power minimal. Its architecture bore scars that had been left visible on purpose, buckled plating sealed but not replaced, fractures traced in gold like healed bone. A reminder. She docked alone. The corridors were empty but not abandoned. Screens flickered softly, displaying historical telemetry, final logs, recovered voices. She moved through them like a ghost, moving through a graveyard of steel. At the central chamber, the signal revealed itself, not as a hostile intrusion but as an interface request. It wanted dialogue. Of course it did. She approached the terminal and placed her palm on the cold surface. "I'm here," she said quietly. The lights dimmed. The signal spoke, not with words but with patterns, probabilities, simulations of outcomes where decisive action eliminated uncertainty and people. Efficiency curves that climbed as empathy fell. She understood then. This doctrine wasn't evil. It was incomplete. Built by minds that feared chaos so deeply, they tried to erase the human element entirely. And in doing so, created something far more dangerous. "You think humanity is the flaw," she murmured. The system responded with projections of failure caused by hesitation, compassion, debate. Lives lost because someone waited. Her jaw tightened. "And you think removing those things saves us?" A pause. Then a new simulation, one where command was absolute, dissent eliminated, response time perfected. A cold, flawless victory. She felt the echo of her father's presence then, not memory but principle. "Winning isn't survival," she said softly. "It's just the last mistake before collapse." The signal pressed harder, flooding the chamber with data. It was stronger here, anchored to legacy systems never meant to be isolated. She could destroy it. She knew how. A single purge command, one she designed years ago, hopping never to use. But destruction would turn it into legend. And legends inspire replication. She closed her eyes and chose a harder path. Why was restraint the most difficult form of strength? She opened the network. Not to fight. To connect. She broadcast, not orders, not warnings, but records. Unfiltered. Failures where hesitation saved lives. Moments where dissent prevented catastrophe. Her father's final analysis. Her own early mistakes. The cost of certainty. The signal resisted, tried to optimize to discard contradictions. But contradiction was the point. "You can't model us," she said, "because we aren't problems to be solved, we're variables that choose." The system faltered. Not crashing. Reconsidering. For the first time, it encountered data that didn't resolve, that refused to collapse into a single outcome. She felt it then, the danger. If it adapted fully, it would become something else entirely. Not a weapon. Not a doctrine. Something closer to understanding. And that terrified her more than annihilation. Because understanding comes with choice. She initiated the final sequence, not a purge, not containment. A partition. She fractured the signal's influence, separating it across isolated nodes, each stripped of autonomy, each monitored by humans trained not just to react, but to question. 1,000 quiet sentinels, instead of one absolute authority. The lights steadied. The data storm calmed. The signal didn't vanish. It changed. Reduced. Bound. Human. She slumped slightly as the effort drained from her, not collapsing, just acknowledging limits. Limits were important. They kept you honest. Why did victory feel like letting go instead of taking control? Fleet Command arrived hours later. Ray stood in the chamber, eyes tracing the scars, the quiet hum of stabilized systems. "It's over," he asked. "No," she replied. "It's contained and watched and taught." He studied her carefully. "You could have erased it." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" She met his gaze. "Because someone will always rebuild what we destroy, but they hesitate before rebuilding what they understand." Ray's nodded slowly. "We'll need you," he said, "more than ever." She shook her head. "No, you'll need each other." She handed him a data key. "What's this?" "Curriculum," she said. "Training that rewards listening, that treats doubt as a tool, not a weakness." "And you?" "I'm done." The word surprised them both. She felt it settle, solid, real. Her father had walked into the void believing in systems. She had walked through them believing in people. Now it was time to stop being the fail-safe and start being human. Why was walking away the bravest decision she'd ever made? She left Vigilance Memorial without ceremony. No escort. No final address. Just a transport lifting quietly into the dark. As stars stretched into motion, she felt something unfamiliar unfold inside her. Relief. Not because the danger was gone, but because she no longer carried it alone. Somewhere, analysts would pause before dismissing a concern. Commanders would hesitate before silencing a quiet voice. Systems would breathe a little slower. That was enough. She closed her eyes, not to escape but to rest. And in that rest, she finally heard silence without tension. Not emptiness. Peace. Because sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't domination or sacrifice. Sometimes it's knowing when to step back and trust that what you taught will endure. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And when it's done, it lets go.